The mid-1960s were a time of muscle cars and sleek designs, but not every vehicle from 1965 was a hit. Some were over-engineered, poorly designed, or simply out of touch with consumer expectations. Let's take a look at 15 of the dumbest cars from 1965 that make you wonder, what were they thinking? The 1965 Ford Mustang, particularly the early models, represents a fascinating case of a car that would go on to achieve legendary status, but initially stumbled due to poor build quality. When the Mustang debuted in April 1964, it was an immediate sensation, capturing the hearts of American drivers with its sleek design, sporty appeal, and affordable price point. However, the initial rush to meet the overwhelming demand resulted in some significant quality control issues, particularly in the early 1965 model year, which tarnished its reputation right out of the gate. Ford had not anticipated the incredible popularity that the Mustang would achieve. The car was initially projected to sell about 100,000 units in its first year, but within months it became clear that demand was far higher. The company scrambled to accelerate production, which led to corners being cut in insufficient testing of the early vehicles. As a result, many of the first Mustangs to roll off the assembly line were plagued with a variety of issues that frustrated new owners. One of the most notable problems with early 1965 Mustangs was overheating. The standard 170 cubic inch inline-six engine and the more powerful 289 cubic inch V8 versions were prone to running hot, especially in warmer climates or under heavy use. In many cases, inadequate cooling systems couldn't keep the engines at optimal temperatures, leading to overheating issues that left some early Mustang owners stranded. This problem wasn't just a minor inconvenience. Overheating could cause long-term damage to the engine if not addressed properly. Ford later improved the cooling systems, but many of the earliest cars were stuck with this issue unless owners opted for aftermarket solutions or dealer repairs. The interior quality of the early Mustangs also drew criticism. While the Mustang's exterior styling was undeniably appealing, the inside of the car told a different story. Many buyers quickly discovered that the interiors were flimsy and felt cheap. Ford had focused on making the Mustang affordable, which meant that cost-saving measures were applied liberally throughout the cabin. Thin plastics, low-quality upholstery, and easily breakable components were common complaints. Dashboard pieces and door panels often felt poorly constructed, with some owners reporting that parts rattled or came loose after only a few months of ownership. This lack of durability created a disconnect between the car's stylish exterior and the overall driving experience, particularly in the eyes of those expecting a more refined product. Another major issue was the electrical system. Early Mustangs were notorious for having unreliable wiring, leading to problems with the lights, gauges, and other electrical components. Short circuits and blown fuses were frequent complaints, with some cars even experiencing issues where the headlights or turn signals would suddenly fail. These electrical gremlins were a source of frustration for many early Mustang owners and were often difficult to diagnose and fix. In some cases, entire wiring harnesses had to be replaced to resolve the issues, which was neither cheap nor convenient. The rushed production also had an impact on the overall fit and finish of the early Mustangs. Panel gaps were inconsistent, and some early cars exhibited poor alignment in the bodywork. Doors, hoods, and trunk lids didn't always close properly, leading to complaints about the car feeling less solid than it should have. Weather stripping issues were also common, leading to leaks during rainstorms and making the cars less enjoyable to drive in poor weather conditions. The Mustang was intended to be a personal car that balanced style and performance, but these early build quality issues made it feel incomplete to many owners. Despite these flaws, the Mustang's immediate popularity helped it weather these early criticisms. Ford was quick to make adjustments, improving production processes and addressing many of the issues that plagued the first wave of cars. Later models from 1965 and beyond benefited from these refinements, and by 1966, the Mustang had earned a much stronger reputation for reliability and performance. However, the problems of those early cars are an often overlooked aspect of the Mustang's history, especially given how the car would go on to become one of the most beloved and iconic vehicles in automotive history. In the long run, these early hiccups didn't stop the Mustang from achieving legendary status, but they did serve as a reminder of the dangers of rushing a product to market without sufficient attention to quality control. The 1965 AMC Marlin was a car that found itself trapped in an unfortunate identity crisis. American Motors Corporation, AMC, designed the Marlin to be a bold departure from the company's reputation for practical, economy-oriented cars, aiming to capture a slice of the burgeoning market for sporty, stylish vehicles. With its unique fastback design and aspirations to blend sportiness with luxury, the Marlin was intended to appeal to buyers looking for something that combined the best of both worlds. However, it ended up being neither, too large to be sporty and too slow to be luxurious, resulting in a vehicle that struggled to find its place in a rapidly evolving automotive market. When the AMC Marlin debuted in 1965, it was clear that the company wanted to capitalize on the success of the fastback craze, which was being popularized by cars like the Ford Mustang and Plymouth Barracuda. However, AMC made a critical miscalculation by basing the Marlin on the platform of its Rambler Classic, a mid-size car that was much larger and heavier than the compact, lightweight muscle cars it sought to compete with. This decision immediately put the Marlin at a disadvantage. Its awkward proportions, with a long, stretched body and oversized fastback roofline, didn't quite fit the sleek, aggressive image that consumers associated with muscle cars. The Marlin's dimensions, particularly its 117-inch wheelbase, were significantly larger than most other fastbacks of the era, making it feel more like a full-size car dressed up in sporty clothing. This made it difficult for the Marlin to convey the nimble, performance-oriented character that buyers were looking for in a fastback. At over 3,000 pounds, the Marlin was also too heavy to deliver the kind of thrilling driving experience that was expected of a sporty car. Its large size may have provided more interior space and comfort, but it also hurt its handling, acceleration, and overall performance, leaving it feeling more cumbersome than athletic. Performance-wise, the Marlin didn't live up to the fastback's sporty promises. The standard engine was a 232 cubic inch inline-six, which produced a meager 145 horsepower, clearly not enough to give the car any real muscle. For those seeking more power, AMC offered a 287 cubic inch V8 and a larger 327 cubic inch V8 as optional upgrades. While the V8s provided a bit more power, they still didn't deliver the high-performance thrills that buyers were coming to expect from cars in the burgeoning muscle car segment. The Marlin's sluggish acceleration and lackluster top speed made it feel underwhelming when compared to other muscle cars of the time, such as the Pontiac GTO or the Chevrolet Chevelle SS. This performance gap was a major issue because AMC was trying to position the Marlin as a sporty alternative to its more conservative offerings. However, in a market that was beginning to embrace the raw power and aggressive styling of true muscle cars, the Marlin simply couldn't keep up. Its relatively weak engines and heavy body made it difficult for the car to achieve the performance necessary to justify its sporty image. For muscle car enthusiasts, the Marlin fell short of their expectations for speed and handling, which were key selling points in this increasingly competitive market. In terms of luxury, the Marlin didn't quite measure up either. While it did offer a more comfortable and spacious interior than many of the smaller, more compact muscle cars, it lacked the refinement and high-end features that buyers in the luxury segment sought. The interior, though roomy, felt utilitarian compared to the more upscale offerings from brands like Buick, Oldsmobile, or Chrysler, which were better positioned to offer both performance and luxury. The Marlin's interior materials were largely derived from the more mundane Rambler line, and while it was certainly comfortable, it didn't exude the sense of luxury or premium craftsmanship that buyers expected from cars in its price range. Another area where the Marlin struggled was in its styling. While the fastback design was certainly eye-catching, it wasn't universally loved. Some critics found the car's proportions to be off-putting, particularly the long rear deck that extended from the sloping roofline. The result was a car that looked too large for the fastback design to seem natural, giving it a somewhat ungainly appearance. The tall roofline and large sloping rear end gave the Marlin a top-heavy look that detracted from the sleek, low-slung image typically associated with fastbacks. It was neither elegant nor aggressive, falling somewhere in between and missing the mark on both fronts. Adding to the Marlin's confusion was AMC's marketing, which seemed unsure of how to position the car. On one hand, the Marlin was promoted as a sporty fastback aimed at younger buyers, but its size and performance were more in line with a grand touring car. The 1965 Chevrolet Corvair holds a notorious place in automotive history due to its dangerous handling and the firestorm of controversy surrounding its rear-engine design. Although the Corvair initially appeared as a groundbreaking American car with its unconventional engineering and sleek styling, it ultimately became a symbol of corporate negligence and unsafe automotive practices. The car's notoriety was cemented in Ralph Nader's 1965 book, Unsafe at Any Speed, which heavily criticized the Corvair and contributed to its tarnished reputation. While the Corvair was innovative in many ways, its instability in corners and rear-engine layout made it one of the most dangerous and controversial cars of the 1960s. When Chevrolet introduced the Corvair in 1960, it was meant to be a bold departure from the standard designs of American cars at the time. It featured a rear-mounted air-cooled engine, a flat 6-engine configuration, uncommon in American cars, and independent suspension, making it distinct from the front-engine, rear-wheel drive layout that dominated the market. The goal was to compete with small, economical European imports like the Volkswagen Beetle and Porsche 356, offering something different from Chevrolet's traditionally large, heavy, and gas-guzzling cars. The second-generation Corvair, introduced in 1965, brought a more refined, stylish design and improved suspension, but by then, the damage to its reputation had already been done. The earlier models, particularly those from 1960 to 1963, had serious design flaws that carried over into the 1965 version. The most significant issue was the car's swing-axle rear suspension, which was prone to causing oversteer. When coupled with the rear-engine configuration, this suspension setup made the car highly unstable, particularly in sharp turns or when cornering at high speeds. Drivers who weren't accustomed to the Corvair's unique handling characteristics could easily lose control, leading to spins or rollovers. The rear-engine design also contributed to weight distribution problems. With the engine located behind the rear axle, the Corvair had a significant rearward weight bias. This made the car difficult to handle, especially in emergency maneuvers or slippery road conditions. The imbalance often caused the rear end to swing out unexpectedly, catching drivers off guard and leading to accidents. Inexperienced drivers, or those unfamiliar with the quirks of rear-engine vehicles, were especially vulnerable to losing control of the car during hard cornering or sudden braking. In many cases, drivers would lift off the throttle mid-turn, which would shift weight forward and further destabilize the rear end, making the car even more likely to spin out. One of the most damning criticisms of the Corvair was that it lacked a crucial anti-sway bar in its early models, which could have helped mitigate the car's oversteering tendencies. Chevrolet, in an effort to keep production costs low, had opted not to include this vital component, which was standard in many other cars. The omission of the anti-sway bar made the Corvair's handling even more unpredictable and hazardous. By the time Chevrolet did address this issue with a new suspension system in the 1965 model, the damage to the car's reputation had already been done. The culmination of these handling issues was famously brought to public attention by Ralph Nader. In Unsafe at Any Speed, Nader singled out the Corvair as a prime example of the automotive industry's disregard for consumer safety in favor of profits. He argued that Chevrolet had knowingly produced a car that was inherently dangerous due to its flawed design, and that the company had failed to take the necessary steps to fix the problems before releasing it to the public. Nader's book, along with the growing body of evidence from accidents involving the Corvair, helped to spark the consumer safety movement in the United States and led to increased scrutiny of automotive safety standards. Chevrolet, in response to the growing controversy, made several improvements to the Corvair in the mid-1960s, including the adoption of a fully independent rear suspension in 1965, which helped alleviate some of the handling problems. However, by that point, the Corvair had become a symbol of dangerous automotive design, and its sales began to plummet. Despite the improvements, the public's perception of the car had been irrevocably damaged, and Chevrolet eventually discontinued the Corvair in 1969. The fallout from the Corvair debacle didn't just affect Chevrolet, it had profound implications for the entire automotive industry. Nader's crusade against unsafe cars led to the establishment of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in 1966 and the introduction of stricter safety regulations. The 1965 Plymouth Barracuda occupies an interesting spot in muscle car history, especially because it arrived just before the American muscle car scene exploded with iconic models like the Ford Mustang and Pontiac GTO. Although marketed as a sporty, performance-oriented vehicle, the 1965 Barracuda was, in reality, a far cry from the true muscle cars that would define the genre. The problem wasn't in its appearance, but in its underwhelming performance, leaving buyers feeling like they'd purchased a fastback with the heart of a compact sedan rather than a road-dominating powerhouse. The first-generation Plymouth Barracuda, introduced in 1964, was Plymouth's response to the growing demand for smaller, stylish cars aimed at younger buyers. The Barracuda was based on the Plymouth Valiant platform, a compact car, and it borrowed heavily from the Valiant's design and engineering. The most distinctive feature of the Barracuda was its massive rear wraparound window, which gave the car its fastback look and a unique visual appeal. However, under the hood, the Barracuda was not as revolutionary as its styling suggested. In 1965, the Barracuda's standard engine was a modest 170 cubic inch inline-six that produced only 101 horsepower. This was nowhere near enough to satisfy the growing demand for performance from buyers who were looking for something more powerful, especially with cars like the Mustang rapidly setting the standard for what a sporty car should be. Even the optional 273 cubic inch of V8 engine, which produced 180 horsepower, was underpowered by the standards of the time. While it offered better acceleration than the inline-six, it still wasn't enough to compete with the muscle cars that would soon dominate the market. The V8's output of 180 horsepower was respectable, but not impressive in a market where competitors were offering much higher-powered engines. The Pontiac GTO, for example, which had debuted the previous year, was already sporting a 389 cubic inch oval rate with up to 360 horsepower, setting the bar extremely high for muscle cars in terms of raw power. In comparison, the Barracuda's 273 cubic inch V8 felt like an entry-level option, rather than the heart of a true performance machine. The sluggish handling of the 1965 Barracuda didn't help its cause either. Its suspension setup, borrowed from the Valiant, was designed more for comfort and economy than for high-speed cornering or performance driving. The car's weight distribution, combined with its basic suspension, made it feel heavy and unresponsive in turns. While it handled well enough for everyday driving, it lacked the agility and precision that buyers expected from a performance car. This made it feel more like a compact family car dressed up in sporty fastback clothing, rather than a serious contender in the performance car market. Moreover, the Barracuda's marketing, which positioned it as a sporty, fast car, raised expectations that the car couldn't meet. Advertisements emphasized the car's sleek design and fastback profile, implying that it had the muscle to back up its looks. However, the reality was that the Barracuda's powertrain and chassis were far too tame to deliver the kind of driving experience that muscle car enthusiasts craved. The car's styling may have been eye-catching, but its lack of power and uninspiring handling left buyers wanting more. Adding to the frustration for many buyers was the fact that the Barracuda didn't have the aggressive performance image that cars like the Mustang or Chevrolet Chevelle exuded. Those cars were marketed not just as sporty options, but as true performance machines, and they delivered on that promise. The Barracuda, in contrast, felt like it was trying to be a jack-of-all-trades, combining the practicality of a compact car with the appearance of a sports car, but not excelling in either area. This identity crisis left the 1965 Barracuda in an awkward position. It wasn't a bad car by any means. It was reliable, well-built, and had a distinctive style, but it wasn't a muscle car either. For buyers who wanted a balance between everyday practicality and weekend performance, the Barracuda may have fit the bill. However, for those who were drawn in by its sporty appearance and expected muscle car level power and handling, the Barracuda was a disappointment. In later years, Plymouth would learn from these early missteps. By the time the 1970 Barracuda rolled around, it had fully embraced its muscle car potential with powerful V8 engine options, aggressive styling, and the kind of performance that the 1965 model lacked. The Barracuda's transformation into a true muscle car icon would come later, but in its early years, it struggled to live up to the expectations of the burgeoning muscle car market. The 1965 Mercury Comet Cyclone was meant to be Mercury's entry into the rapidly growing muscle car market. As a performance variant of the Mercury Comet, it was designed to offer a balance of style, speed, and power. However, despite its promising looks and performance upgrades, the Comet Cyclone suffered from one critical flaw: its poorly tuned suspension. The result was a car that struggled to handle the road with the finesse or comfort that buyers expected from a muscle car, leaving it far from the thrilling driving experience it was intended to provide. At first glance, the Comet Cyclone seemed poised to challenge its competitors. It was powered by a 289 cubic inch V8 engine, producing 225 horsepower, which gave it decent acceleration and speed. On paper, it had what it took to be a respectable performance car, especially in an era when the muscle car wars were heating up. Its aggressive styling, with a sleek front grille, sporty lines, and Cyclone badging, promised a high-performance experience that could compete with popular models like the Ford Mustang, its close corporate sibling, or the Pontiac GTO. However, once drivers got behind the wheel, the Cyclone's suspension issues became painfully clear. The suspension was not tuned to handle the kind of aggressive driving that muscle car enthusiasts demanded. Instead of offering a smooth, controlled ride, the Comet Cyclone suspension was unrefined, leading to bumpy rides and excessive body roll when cornering or driving over uneven roads. For a car that was supposed to provide excitement and high-speed thrills, this made for an uncomfortable and uninspiring experience. The poor suspension tuning meant that the Cyclone had trouble keeping its balance during spirited driving. When taking sharp turns or corners at speed, the body roll was so pronounced that it could make drivers feel like the car was on the verge of tipping over. This excessive lean made the car feel unstable and undermined confidence behind the wheel. For muscle car buyers who were looking for a vehicle that could handle not just straight-line speed, but also tight turns and quick maneuvers, the Cyclone suspension was a significant letdown. The suspension also had a tendency to make the car feel detached from the road. While muscle cars are typically known for their raw, visceral driving experiences, the Comet Cyclone felt disconnected, as if the driver wasn't fully in control of the car's movements. This issue was especially noticeable at higher speeds, where the car's lack of precise handling became more apparent. Drivers expecting the sharp, responsive performance that was characteristic of the era's top muscle cars were left disappointed. Mercury's decision to carry over much of the Comet's compact car platform likely contributed to these suspension issues. The Comet was originally designed as a small, economical car, and while the Cyclone version received engine upgrades, it didn't receive the suspension improvements necessary to turn it into a true performance machine. The underpinnings were simply not designed to handle the extra power and the demands of high-speed driving. This disconnect between the car's performance aspirations and its actual engineering was a major flaw in the 1965 Cyclone's design. Another factor that contributed to the Cyclone's rough ride was its solid rear axle, a common feature in American cars of the time, but one that often compromised ride quality and handling. While solid axles are durable and effective for drag racing and straight-line acceleration, they tend to be less effective for cornering and high-speed maneuvering. Independent rear suspension systems, which were being introduced by some competitors, offered a smoother and more stable ride, especially when driving on uneven surfaces or taking tight turns. The Cyclone's solid axle setup, combined with its stiff suspension, resulted in a harsh ride that couldn't compete with the more refined handling of cars like the Mustang. The bumpy rides that resulted from the Cyclone's poorly tuned suspension also detracted from its appeal as a daily driver. Many buyers in the muscle car market wanted a car that could deliver excitement on weekends, but still be comfortable enough for everyday use. The Cyclone's ride quality, however, made long drives uncomfortable, especially on rough or uneven roads. This lack of comfort hurt its versatility and made it less appealing compared to other muscle cars that offered a better balance of performance and comfort. In terms of handling, the Cyclone's excessive body roll was particularly detrimental. Muscle cars of the 1960s were often defined not just by their speed in a straight line, but also by their ability to handle corners with confidence. The Cyclone's suspension simply wasn't up to the task. The 1965 Studebaker Wagonaire was an ambitious and innovative vehicle that tried to redefine what a family station wagon could be. One of its standout features was its sliding roof over the rear cargo area, designed to offer extra utility by allowing tall objects to be carried upright in the back, much like a pickup truck. While this feature certainly set the Wagonaire apart from its competitors, it came with significant drawbacks that ultimately made the car impractical for everyday use. The most notorious issue was the leaky roof, which plagued owners and rendered the car largely unsuitable for rainy or snowy conditions. The concept behind the Wagonaire was ahead of its time. Designed by the famous automotive designer Brooks Stevens, the sliding roof was an attempt to combine the spaciousness of a station wagon with the versatility of an open-air vehicle. By sliding the roof panel back, owners could easily carry oversized cargo, such as furniture or appliances, which wouldn't fit in a conventional station wagon. This made the Wagonaire particularly appealing for families or individuals who needed extra cargo space, but didn't want to sacrifice passenger comfort or opt for a truck. However, while the sliding roof was a clever innovation in theory, it became a major design flaw in practice. The primary issue was that the roof system wasn't well engineered to withstand the elements. The seals around the sliding roof were prone to failure, especially as the car aged or was exposed to weather conditions over time. This meant that the roof frequently developed leaks, allowing water to seep into the car's interior. For drivers in areas with regular rain, snow, or even heavy dew, this quickly became a significant problem. The leaky roof not only made the car uncomfortable, but also posed a risk of damaging the interior. Water intrusion could lead to soaked seats, ruined upholstery, and unpleasant odors from mold and mildew. For a family-oriented car like the Wagonaire, this was a major issue, as families needed a reliable and durable vehicle that could withstand everyday use in all kinds of weather. Instead, many Wagonaire owners found themselves frustrated by the constant need to deal with water damage, wiping down the interior or taking the car in for repairs, which often didn't solve the root problem. The water leaks also had a direct impact on the car's resale value. Buyers soon realized that the sliding roof, while unique, was more trouble than it was worth. Once word got out about the roof's tendency to leak, the Wagonaire developed a reputation as an impractical car, especially for those living in wetter climates. This made the car harder to sell, and owners often had to accept lower prices on the used car market. What started as a selling point, a versatile, convertible-like wagon, quickly turned into a liability that discouraged potential buyers. Beyond the leaking roof, the design of the Wagonaire was also somewhat awkward and unconventional. The rear end of the car, which was modified to accommodate the sliding roof mechanism, looked slightly out of proportion with the rest of the body. While the front of the car had a classic station wagon appearance, the rear was bulkier and less cohesive in its design. This gave the car a somewhat unbalanced look, which didn't appeal to all buyers. While Studebaker hoped the car's innovation would make up for its aesthetics, it ultimately turned off consumers who preferred a more traditional design. Additionally, the sliding roof system was not particularly easy to use. It required manual effort to open and close, which could be cumbersome, especially if the roof was stiff or misaligned. Over time, wear and tear could make the roof harder to slide, leading to more issues with functionality. This, combined with the roof's leaking problems, made the sliding roof more of a novelty than a practical feature for many owners. The Wagonaire's leak issues also contributed to Studebaker's declining reputation during the 1960s. By this time, the company was already struggling financially, and its vehicles were often viewed as outdated or uncompetitive compared to those from larger automakers like Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler. The Wagonaire's failure to deliver on its promises only added to Studebaker's woes, as it was seen as a symbol of the company's inability to innovate successfully. Studebaker had bet on the Wagonaire's sliding roof to give the brand a unique selling point in the crowded station wagon market, but instead it became a symbol of the company's fading relevance. In the years following the Wagonair's release, Studebaker would continue to struggle, and by the end of 1966, the company ceased automobile production entirely. While the Wagonair was not the sole reason for Studebaker's downfall, its failure to meet consumer expectations certainly didn't help the company's fortunes. The 1965 Dodge Polara was a full-size sedan that aimed to combine the practicality of a large family car with some of the excitement and performance associated with muscle cars. Unfortunately, it failed to achieve either goal convincingly. Despite Dodge's efforts to market the Polara as a stylish and powerful vehicle, it ended up being remembered as overly stiff in terms of ride quality and, for many, simply boring in both design and performance. The Polara's stiff ride was one of its most significant drawbacks. While it was common for cars in the 1960s to have firm suspensions, especially those geared toward performance, the Polara's suspension was uncomfortably rigid for a family sedan. The car's torsion bar suspension system was designed to improve handling and keep the vehicle stable on the road, but it was not well tuned for comfort, especially when driving on rough or uneven roads. Passengers would feel every bump and pothole, making long journeys uncomfortable, particularly for families who were likely to be the primary buyers of this full-size car. The stiff suspension also detracted from the car's appeal to performance enthusiasts. Muscle cars of the time, such as the Pontiac GTO and Ford Mustang, managed to balance performance with a degree of ride comfort, allowing drivers to enjoy both speed and handling without being jarred by rough roads. The Polara, on the other hand, didn't deliver the same smooth performance experience. While it offered a sense of stability on straight roads, its uncomfortable ride made it difficult for drivers to fully enjoy its capabilities. In terms of design, the 1965 Dodge Polara didn't stand out from the crowd. Its exterior was typical of mid-1960s American sedans, a long, boxy body with minimal styling flourishes. The front grille and headlights were conservative, and the overall look of the car lacked the boldness or flair that was common among its competitors. While Dodge's more aggressive designs would later become hallmarks of its muscle cars, the Polara's styling was disappointingly dull. Buyers looking for something that felt modern or eye-catching were left underwhelmed, as the Polara's design seemed outdated compared to other vehicles on the market. The engine options available for the 1965 Polara further failed to impress. While the car did offer a 383 cubic inch V8 engine, which delivered decent power, it didn't have the performance edge that muscle car buyers were craving. The engine options were aimed more at providing reliable family transportation rather than high-speed thrills. This left the Polara in a strange position, too large and heavy to be a true performance car, but also not comfortable or well-equipped enough to be a luxurious, full-size sedan. As a result, it struggled to find a clear identity in the marketplace. The base engine for the Polara was a 225 cubic inches slant 6, which provided good fuel efficiency, but was painfully underpowered for such a large car. This engine was perfectly fine for city driving and daily commutes, but it didn't offer the kind of acceleration or power that drivers might have expected from a car of its size. Even the available V8 engines didn't have the muscle or performance tuning that Dodge would later become known for. The Polara's weight, combined with its underwhelming engine options, meant that the car often felt sluggish and unresponsive, particularly when trying to accelerate or overtake on highways. Another issue was the Polara's lack of innovation. By the mid-1960s, American automakers were competing fiercely in both the family car and muscle car markets, with companies like Ford and General Motors introducing new technologies, safety features, and design elements that made their cars more appealing to buyers. The Polara, on the other hand, didn't offer anything particularly new or exciting. Its safety features were basic, and its interior was functional but uninspired, with few of the conveniences or luxury touches that buyers were starting to expect from full-size sedans. For a car that was supposed to be a versatile and appealing option for a wide range of drivers, the Polara failed to make a lasting impression. Dodge seemed unsure of what the Polara should be, a practical family car or a performance-oriented sedan, and as a result, it didn't excel at either. The car's stiff ride alienated buyers who wanted comfort, while its uninspiring engine options and bland design left muscle car enthusiasts unimpressed. Even though the Dodge Polara had a long production run, spanning from 1960 to 1973, the 1965 model year stands out as a low point in the car's history. The market for full-size sedans was increasingly competitive, and the Polara simply didn't offer enough in terms of performance, design, or comfort to keep up with its rivals. The 1965 Oldsmobile Jetstar. I was created as a more affordable and sporty alternative to the Oldsmobile Starfire, but it ultimately failed to live up to its billing. While Oldsmobile hoped to capture the growing muscle car market by offering a stylish, performance-oriented vehicle at a lower price, the Jetstar, I ended up feeling underwhelming and underpowered. Instead of standing out as a true muscle car, it came off as a cheap imitation, with lackluster performance that left it overshadowed by its competitors. Oldsmobile launched the Jetstar Moron to appeal to younger buyers who were interested in muscle cars, but might not be able to afford higher-end models like the Starfire, or even some of the other performance cars of the era. Positioned as a budget-friendly option, the Jetstar was priced lower than the Starfire, and even borrowed several of its design elements to maintain a sporty appearance. It featured a sleek, fastback-style body with chrome accents and a large grille, giving it the aggressive look that muscle car enthusiasts craved. But while the car had the aesthetics of a performance vehicle, it lacked the power and engineering to back up its sporty image. One of the main problems with the Jetstar was its engine. Oldsmobile offered the car with a 330 cubic inch V8 engine, which sounded impressive on paper, but didn't deliver the kind of performance drivers expected from a muscle car. The engine produced around 260 horsepower, which was decent, but significantly less than the 345 horsepower output of the Starfire's 425 cubic inch V8. This left the Jetstar feeling sluggish compared to its more powerful siblings and rivals, particularly when lined up against competitors like the Pontiac GTO or the Ford Mustang, which delivered the kind of speed and acceleration that defined the muscle car era. The Jetstar also suffered from a cheap feel, both in terms of materials and ride quality. In an effort to cut costs and keep the car affordable, Oldsmobile used lower-grade materials for the interior. Buyers often complained that the seats and dashboard felt plasticky and lacked the luxurious touches that could be found in other Oldsmobile models. This wasn't necessarily a deal-breaker for muscle car buyers. After all, performance was typically more important than luxury in that segment. But the Jetstar's underwhelming performance combined with its low-rent interior made it feel like a compromise, rather than a true alternative to more expensive models. The car's handling and ride quality were another disappointment. Despite being marketed as a sporty vehicle, the Jetstar lacked the suspension tuning and chassis refinement necessary to deliver an engaging driving experience. It felt heavy and unresponsive in corners, with noticeable body roll that detracted from any sense of agility. While it performed adequately for everyday driving, it didn't provide the thrilling ride that muscle car enthusiasts sought. In comparison to competitors that offered sharper handling and a more exhilarating drive, the Jetstar felt flat and uninspiring. Another issue was that Oldsmobile didn't provide many options for customization or upgrading performance. Buyers looking to boost the Jetstar wing's power or handling didn't have the same range of performance packages or engine upgrades that other manufacturers offered. This left the Jetstar feeling static in a market that was increasingly focused on customization and personalization, where drivers wanted to make their cars faster, more powerful, and more unique. The Jetstar also faced stiff competition from both within the General Motors family and from rival brands. Cars like the Pontiac GTO, Chevrolet Chevelle SS, and Ford Fairlane offered better performance and handling, and they quickly captured the attention of the muscle car market. Even within the Oldsmobile lineup, the Jetstar was competing with the Cutlass and 442, which were better received by buyers thanks to their more balanced blend of performance and affordability. As a result, the Jetstar was stuck in a tough spot. It was more expensive than some entry-level muscle cars, but didn't offer the performance or quality to justify its price. Sales of the Jetstar were underwhelming, and it never gained the traction Oldsmobile hoped for in the muscle car market. By 1965, the Jetstar was already losing its appeal, and Oldsmobile quietly discontinued the model after that year. It was a short-lived experiment that failed to capture the essence of what made muscle cars so popular during the 1960s, where muscle cars were about raw power, excitement, and customization. The Jetstar, I felt like a compromise, a car that tried to be sporty but ultimately lacked the performance and personality to compete with the true heavyweights of the era. The 1965 Buick Skylark Grand Sport was Buick's ambitious foray into the burgeoning muscle car market, a segment dominated by lighter, faster cars like the Pontiac GTO and Ford Mustang. While Buick aimed to inject some of its luxury pedigree into a muscle car package, the Grand Sport ultimately fell short in one crucial area. It was too heavy. This weight problem significantly hindered its ability to deliver the raw performance that muscle car buyers demanded, leaving it unable to fully compete with its lighter, more agile rivals. Buick equipped the Skylark Grand Sport with an impressive engine, a 401 cubic inch V8, which produced a solid 325 horsepower and was capable of generating plenty of torque. The engine, known as the Nailhead 5.8, had a reputation for being reliable and powerful, with a throaty growl that muscle car enthusiasts loved. On paper, these numbers should have positioned the Grand Sport as a serious contender in the muscle car race. However, the car's weight, coming in at over 3,600 pounds, was a major obstacle to truly unlocking the engine's potential. Despite the considerable power, the Skylark Grand Sport struggled to reach the kind of acceleration and top speeds that define the muscle car ethos. The power-to-weight ratio is a critical factor in determining a car's performance, particularly in the muscle car world where straight-line speed and quarter-mile times are often the measure of success. For the Skylark Grand Sport, its large and relatively heavy body meant that it couldn't achieve the same explosive acceleration as lighter competitors. The car's additional weight caused it to feel sluggish off the line, and while it had good mid-range torque for highway driving, it lacked the high-revving power delivery that made lighter cars like the GTO and Mustang such thrilling driver's cars. Buick's decision to prioritize luxury also worked against the Grand Sport in the muscle car market. While the Grand Sport was marketed as a performance vehicle, it was still very much a Buick at heart, meaning it was built with comfort and refinement in mind. The interior was plush, featuring soft materials, a well-appointed dashboard, and ample sound insulation to create a quieter ride. These were qualities that Buick's traditional customers appreciated, but muscle car buyers were looking for a more visceral experience, one where the engine roar and road feedback were part of the thrill. The heavier build of the Grand Sport, along with its emphasis on comfort, created a disconnect between its sporty appearance and actual driving dynamics. In terms of handling, the 1965 Skylark Grand Sport suffered from the same issues that plagued its straight-line performance. The heavy chassis and suspension tuning that leaned toward comfort over agility meant that the car didn't handle corners with the precision or responsiveness muscle car drivers wanted. While the car was stable on the highway and performed adequately for daily driving, it felt ponderous when pushed through tight turns or on winding roads. The body roll was noticeable, and the car lacked the nimbleness that lighter muscle cars like the Chevrolet Chevelle SS and Dodge Dart offered. Enthusiasts looking for a dynamic driving experience were left wanting more from the Grand Sport. Buick's focus on a more refined driving experience also meant that the Grand Sport lacked some of the rawness that defined other muscle cars, where competitors were noisy, aggressive, and unrefined in a way that made driving them feel like an adventure. The Grand Sport came off as too tame. It was smooth and predictable, but that predictability was a downside for muscle car enthusiasts seeking the thrills of high-performance driving. The car's overall demeanor felt more in line with Buick's legacy of upscale, conservative vehicles than with the youthful, rebellious energy that muscle cars symbolized in the 1960s. Despite its shortcomings in the performance department, the 1965 Buick Skylark Grand Sport did have some redeeming qualities. Its luxurious interior and quiet ride made it a more comfortable car for long-distance cruising than many of its rivals, and it offered a balance between performance and comfort that appealed to some buyers. Additionally, its exterior styling was attractive, with clean lines, a bold front grille, and an overall muscular stance that visually communicated its performance intentions. even if it couldn't quite live up to them. However, in the competitive landscape of the 1960s muscle car era, these qualities weren't enough to set the Grand Sport apart. The muscle car market was all about pushing the limits of performance, and the Skylark Grand Sport didn't have the edge needed to compete at that level. Its excessive weight dulled the impact of its powerful engine, and its focus on comfort and luxury over raw driving dynamics put it at a disadvantage against lighter, more aggressive cars that were simply more fun to drive. The 1965 Rambler Classic 770 epitomized the challenges faced by American automakers trying to keep pace with a rapidly evolving automotive landscape during the mid-1960s. While it was designed as a practical, family-friendly vehicle, the Classic 770 struggled to resonate with the changing tastes of consumers who were increasingly drawn to cars that offered both performance and style. Stuck in the past, the Rambler Classic 770 was characterized by outdated and bland styling, as well as uninspired performance that failed to excite potential buyers. From an aesthetic standpoint, the Rambler Classic 770 was decidedly conservative. Its design featured a boxy silhouette, flat body panels, and a restrained front grille that lacked the flair of its contemporaries. While some buyers might appreciate the simplicity and functionality of the design, the overall look was dull compared to the sleek lines and bold shapes that defined the era. In 1965, American consumers were enthralled by the sporty styling of muscle cars and the innovative designs of other manufacturers. The Rambler, with its subdued appearance, failed to capture the attention of those looking for something that conveyed a sense of excitement and modernity. Under the hood, the Rambler Classic 770 came with a variety of engine options, including a base 232 cubic inch inline six and a more powerful 287 cubic inch V8. However, even the V8 engine offered a mere 200 horsepower, which was simply insufficient for a car vying for attention in an era dominated by performance. Buyers were increasingly turning to muscle cars that provided thrilling acceleration and robust power, while the Classic 770's engines were designed more for fuel efficiency and reliability than for spirited driving. This focus on practicality meant that the Rambler offered little in terms of performance excitement, which was a significant drawback at a time when competition in the automotive market was intensifying. The driving experience of the Classic 770 further compounded its issues. With a soft suspension setup designed for comfort rather than performance, the car delivered a cushy ride that felt disconnected from the road. While this made it suitable for daily commuting and family trips, it lacked the handling prowess and responsive feedback that younger, performance-oriented drivers sought. The Rambler's lack of agility and engaging driving dynamics made it feel less like a modern car and more like an afterthought in a changing marketplace. Additionally, the interior of the Classic 770 was practical but uninspiring. It featured basic materials and simple designs, which, while functional, didn't offer the comfort or style found in competing models. The dashboard layout was straightforward, lacking the modern touches and technologies that were becoming increasingly common in cars of that era. For a consumer base becoming accustomed to amenities and creature comforts, the Rambler felt dated and lacked the exciting features that appealed to younger families and individuals. In terms of market positioning, the Rambler Classic 770 was intended to appeal to budget-conscious families looking for reliability and practicality. However, as the muscle car craze took hold, even family-oriented buyers began to seek out vehicles that not only served practical needs, but also reflected their personal aspirations and desires for excitement. In contrast, the Rambler's appeal was rooted in an earlier era, where simplicity and reliability were prioritized over style and performance. The combination of bland design, lackluster performance, and outdated features ultimately hindered the Classic 770's success in a market that was increasingly drawn to bold, dynamic vehicles. By 1965, the American automotive landscape was transforming, with manufacturers emphasizing sportiness and innovation. While the Rambler was a solid vehicle in many respects, it was simply out of step with the times. Despite its shortcomings, the Rambler Classic 770 was still a reliable car that served its purpose for many drivers who prioritized functionality over excitement. It provided decent fuel economy and offered ample interior space, making it suitable for families in need of a practical vehicle. However, as competition intensified from automakers that were embracing new design philosophies and performance metrics, the classic 770 began to fade into the background, overshadowed by more modern offerings. In the end, the 1965 Rambler Classic 770 stands as a reminder of a bygone era in American automotive history. A car that embodied practicality and reliability, but ultimately fell victim to its outdated and bland identity. As the muscle car revolution took hold and drivers sought out vehicles that matched their aspirations, the Rambler Classic 770 was unable to adapt, leading to its eventual decline in popularity and relevance. The 1965 Lincoln Continental convertible is often remembered as one of the most elegant and luxurious vehicles of its time, embodying the peak of American automotive design and prestige. With its sleek lines, distinctive suicide doors, and sophisticated styling, the Continental convertible was a symbol of wealth and sophistication. However, beneath its stunning exterior lay significant flaws, particularly concerning its overly complicated mechanism, specifically the power-operated top that was notorious for its propensity to fail. The mechanism responsible for the convertible top was a marvel of engineering, designed to offer the convenience of a power-operated roof that could easily transition the car from a closed to an open configuration at the touch of a button. While this feature was meant to enhance the luxury experience, it soon became a source of frustration for owners. The complexity of the system meant that numerous components worked in concert, creating multiple points of potential failure. Unfortunately, this design, which aimed to deliver a seamless user experience, instead resulted in frequent malfunctions. Many owners reported issues with the power top, including slow operation, jamming, and even total failure to open or close. These problems stem from both the mechanical components involved in the system and the electrical connections that powered them. The intricate setup included hydraulic pumps, relays, and numerous switches, all of which could easily malfunction, especially with regular wear and tear. For a vehicle that prided itself on luxury and convenience, this constant need for repairs and troubleshooting was anything but opulent. When the power top did fail, the repairs could be prohibitively expensive. Owners found themselves facing significant bills to diagnose and fix the issue, as the complexity of the system often required specialized knowledge and tools. For many, the financial burden associated with maintaining this luxury feature detracted from the overall ownership experience, turning what should have been a source of pride into a headache. The expensive repair bills were a stark contrast to the image of effortless luxury that the Lincoln brand sought to portray. In addition to the functional issues, the failures of the power-operated top had a profound impact on the overall image of the Lincoln Continental convertible. Despite its stunning design and high-quality materials, the constant struggles with the convertible mechanism painted a picture of impracticality. Luxury buyers who expected a flawless experience were left disappointed, feeling that a car of such stature should not come with such significant drawbacks. Moreover, the failure of the power top also diminished the car's appeal in the marketplace. In a segment where style, luxury, and reliability were paramount, the Continental convertible's reputation began to suffer. Potential buyers became wary of the mechanical complexities associated with the convertible top, leading many to opt for alternatives that offered both style and reliability. While the 1965 Lincoln Continental convertible was undoubtedly a beautiful car with a commanding presence on the road, the overly complicated mechanism of its power-operated top became a defining flaw that marred its legacy. Instead of representing the pinnacle of American luxury, the convertible's struggles made it a cautionary tale about the pitfalls of over-engineering in pursuit of convenience. In conclusion, the 1965 Lincoln Continental convertible serves as a prime example of how luxury features, when poorly executed, can detract from the overall ownership experience. While its aesthetic qualities and prestigious reputation initially drew buyers in, the complications associated with its power-operated top ultimately undermined its allure. The elegance of the Continental convertible may have captured the imagination of many, but its impracticality and the nightmare of maintenance turned it into a difficult ownership proposition, reminding us that even the most beautifully designed cars can falter when functionality does not meet expectation. The 1965 Ford Falcon Futura represents a fascinating chapter in American automotive history, specifically in the compact car segment. Initially introduced in the early 1960s as a budget-friendly option, the Falcon quickly gained popularity for its simplicity, reliability, and affordability. However, by 1965, the Falcon Futura began to show signs of obsolescence, primarily characterized by its underpowered engine options and an outdated design that struggled to compete with more stylish and powerful vehicles emerging in the market. When the Ford Falcon was first launched, it was celebrated for its compact size and practicality, appealing to a demographic looking for economical transportation. However, as the automotive landscape evolved throughout the early to mid-1960s, consumer preferences began shifting. The market saw a growing appetite for cars that not only offered efficiency, but also delivered performance and style, attributes that were increasingly embodied by the new wave of muscle cars and sporty compacts. Unfortunately, the Falcon Futura was unable to adapt to these changing demands, leading to its eventual decline in popularity. One of the most significant shortcomings of the 1965 Falcon Futura was its engine options. While the Falcon originally offered a range of engines, including a 170 cubic inch inline-six and a 260 cubic inch V8, these options were beginning to feel lackluster in comparison to the performance being promised by competitors. The inline-six produced a modest 101 horsepower, while the V8 offered just 164 horsepower, figures that paled in comparison to the burgeoning muscle car market, which was now showcasing engines that could produce well over 200 horsepower, in an era where speed and power were becoming defining characteristics of desirable vehicles. The Falcon Futura felt distinctly underwhelming, leaving potential buyers wanting more. The design of the Falcon Futura also contributed to its outdated reputation. By 1965, the compact car segment was becoming increasingly influenced by sleek, aerodynamic shapes and bold styling cues that conveyed a sense of modernity and excitement. However, the Falcon's design language was more conservative, with a boxy silhouette and minimal flair that made it look increasingly dated next to its contemporaries. While the earlier models had enjoyed a certain charm, the 1965 iteration lacked the visual appeal that was becoming essential for attracting buyers who wanted their vehicles to reflect contemporary tastes and lifestyles. In addition to its performance and styling shortcomings, the interior of the Falcon Futura did little to elevate its status. Although it was designed to be functional and comfortable, the cabin materials were basic, and the layout felt uninspired. Features that were becoming standard in competing models, such as more sophisticated dashboard layouts, improved sound insulation, and a wider array of convenience options, were either absent or minimal in the Falcon. For a consumer base increasingly enamored with modern amenities and stylish interiors, the Falcon Futura's cabin felt like a throwback to an earlier time. Despite its limitations, the Falcon Futura still held appeal for a segment of buyers who prioritized economy and reliability over performance and aesthetics. The compact size made it easy to maneuver in urban settings, and it remained a practical choice for those needing a reliable daily driver. However, as other manufacturers capitalized on the muscle car craze and the demand for more stylish vehicles, the Falcon Futura began to fall out of favor. The competition was offering models that not only delivered on performance, but also made a statement in terms of design, qualities that the Falcon was struggling to provide. Ultimately, the 1965 Ford Falcon Futura serves as a reminder of how quickly consumer preferences can shift in the automotive industry. Once a symbol of practicality, the Falcon's struggle to keep pace with the demands for power and style underscored the importance of innovation and adaptability in a rapidly evolving market. While the Falcon Futura was a reliable vehicle in its own right, its underpowered engines and outdated design made it increasingly irrelevant in an era that celebrated boldness and performance. In retrospect, the Falcon Futura stands as both a reflection of its time and a cautionary tale for automakers. It highlights the challenges faced by manufacturers striving to maintain relevance amid changing trends and consumer expectations. Although it played a vital role in establishing the compact car market in America, the Falcon's inability to evolve ultimately led to its decline, paving the way for newer, more dynamic models that would define the automotive landscape of the late 1960s and beyond. The 1965 Pontiac Tempest stands as an example of how innovation in the automotive world can sometimes lead to unintended consequences. At its core, the Tempest was part of Pontiac's broader effort to bring unique engineering solutions to the market, offering a blend of compact car economy with engineering that hinted at performance potential. However, its poor drivetrain design, featuring a rear-mounted transaxle and an unusual rope driveshaft, turned what might have been an innovative car into a reliability nightmare for many owners. Despite Pontiac's ambition to break away from the conventional, these forward-thinking ideas unfortunately resulted in significant issues, particularly when it came to the drivetrain's durability and dependability. One of the most notable features of the Pontiac Tempest was its use of a rear-mounted transaxle. This design was relatively rare in American cars at the time and was intended to improve weight distribution and handling by moving the transmission and differential to the rear of the car. The transaxle concept, commonly associated with European performance cars, offered the promise of better balanced handling as it shifted the weight distribution closer to an even 50-50 split between the front and rear of the vehicle. In theory, this was supposed to make the Tempest feel more agile and responsive on the road, a key selling point for drivers looking for a compact car with some performance pedigree. However, the execution of this idea proved problematic. The transaxle system in the Tempest was complex and prone to issues, particularly in terms of durability. It was far more intricate than traditional drivetrain systems, making it more susceptible to mechanical problems and difficult for mechanics to service. This added complexity meant that when something went wrong, it often required specialized repairs that could be costly and time-consuming, frustrating owners who had expected a more reliable vehicle. Adding to the problems of the transaxle was the use of the now infamous rope driveshaft. Unlike traditional solid steel driveshafts, Pontiac opted for a flexible steel cable to transfer power from the engine, mounted in the front, to the rear-mounted transaxle. This innovative design was intended to reduce vibrations and provide a smoother ride. However, while the idea was interesting in theory, in practice, the rope drive shaft was prone to twisting and snapping, especially under high-stress driving conditions. This resulted in a host of reliability issues, including drivetrain failures that left owners stranded or in need of expensive repairs. The rope drive shaft and rear-mounted transaxle created a perfect storm of mechanical complexity that often overwhelmed the car's ability to function reliably. As the components wore down, the likelihood of failure increased, and many Tempest owners found themselves dealing with major mechanical problems much earlier than they would have expected. These drivetrain issues severely impacted the car's reputation, as buyers seeking Pontiac's combination of affordability and innovation were left with a vehicle that often spent more time in the shop than on the road. Compounding these technical issues was the fact that the 1965 Pontiac Tempest competed in an era where reliability and performance were becoming increasingly important to consumers. The Tempest's mechanical failures undermined its competitiveness against other compact cars that offered more straightforward engineering and fewer reliability headaches. By 1965, buyers were becoming less tolerant of experimental ideas that didn't deliver on promises of improved performance or ease of use. Other manufacturers were beginning to find success with more conventional but robust designs, leaving the Tempest struggling to justify its engineering risks. Despite these drivetrain issues, the Tempest was not without its redeeming qualities. In many respects, it was a bold attempt by Pontiac to push the boundaries of what a compact car could be, blending innovative ideas from both the American and European automotive worlds. For drivers who did not experience significant mechanical issues, the Tempest offered a decent ride and unique driving dynamics due to its balanced weight distribution. It also laid the groundwork for future Pontiac innovations, including the GTO, which would go on to cement the brand's reputation as a maker of performance vehicles. In hindsight, the 1965 Pontiac Tempest represents both the potential and the perils of automotive innovation. While the rear-mounted transaxle and rope drive shaft were attempts to advance the car's engineering, they ultimately became the source of its downfall, turning what could have been a standout model into a cautionary tale of how complex mechanical designs can lead to poor reliability. The 1965 Chrysler Newport is a prime example of a car that, despite its status as a large full-size sedan, failed to keep up with the evolving trends and consumer expectations of the mid-1960s. Introduced as an affordable luxury model within Chrysler's lineup, the Newport had initially found success among buyers looking for a spacious, comfortable, and reliable car. However, by 1965, it was clear that the Newport's outdated design, coupled with its lackluster performance, had rendered it increasingly out of sync with the desires of the American automotive market. Its large, boxy shape, coupled with underwhelming driving dynamics, left it feeling slow, heavy, and less appealing than many of its competitors. The Newport's design was one of its most glaring weaknesses by the time 1965 rolled around. While earlier models of the Newport had embraced the expansive, full-size car trend that was popular in the 1950s, the 1965 model year styling had begun to feel outmoded. The car's boxy and squared-off lines no longer resonated with the consumer base that was gravitating toward more streamlined, sporty, and dynamic shapes. The American automotive market had entered a period where sleek, aggressive designs were becoming increasingly popular, spurred by the muscle car movement and the introduction of cars that exuded modernity and excitement. In contrast, the Newport's large frame and conservative styling made it appear more like a relic of a bygone era than a car that reflected the optimism and forward-looking spirit of the 1960s. The size of the Newport, while traditionally a selling point for full-size sedans, also began to work against it. At over 18 feet long, the Newport was an imposing vehicle, but it lacked the design finesse needed to make such dimensions feel graceful or contemporary. Instead, its bulky and box-like appearance made it feel cumbersome and old-fashioned. Consumers who had once prized the spacious interiors and commanding road presence of large sedans were now beginning to seek cars that combined roominess with a sense of style and agility. The Newport's design simply didn't evoke the same enthusiasm as some of the more stylish, curvier sedans or the burgeoning muscle cars that were dominating the market. On the performance front, the Newport was also starting to fall behind. Despite being equipped with large V8 engines, such as the 383 cubic inch V8 that produced around 270 horsepower, the car's excessive weight and outdated engineering meant that it didn't feel particularly powerful or responsive. In a decade when performance and speed were becoming key selling points, especially with the rise of muscle cars and performance-oriented sedans, the Newport felt heavy and slow by comparison. Its acceleration was sluggish, and the car's handling, due to its size and weight, lacked the precision and agility that consumers were beginning to expect. This further contributed to the Newport's image as a dated and uninspiring choice for buyers looking for more excitement from their vehicles. Adding to the Newport's woes was its driving experience. While it still offered a comfortable ride, thanks to its large size and soft suspension, this comfort came at the cost of handling and performance. The Newport's suspension was designed more for leisurely cruising than for spirited driving, resulting in excessive body roll and a lack of connection with the road. For buyers who were increasingly drawn to cars that offered both comfort and a more engaging driving experience, the Newport's driving dynamics felt old-fashioned and unexciting. This wasn't helped by its relatively poor fuel economy, which was another drawback as consumers started to become more aware of rising fuel costs and efficiency concerns, even if the full impact of these issues wouldn't be felt until the 1970s. Another factor that worked against the Newport was its competition. By 1965, Chrysler was facing stiff competition from a number of other automakers, all of whom were offering large sedans that were either more stylish, more powerful, or both. General Motors, for example, was producing vehicles that combined bold styling with impressive performance, such as the Chevrolet Impala and the Pontiac Catalina. Similarly, Ford's Galaxy line was offering large, full-size cars with a more modern design language and a greater emphasis on performance. These competitors were able to capture the attention of buyers looking for cars that felt both luxurious and in tune with the times, leaving the Newport struggling to find its place. Despite these drawbacks, the Chrysler Newport still had its merits. It remained a reliable and spacious vehicle, offering a large interior that could comfortably seat passengers for long journeys. For families or buyers who prioritize space and comfort over style and performance, the Newport continued to offer value. The 1965 Cadillac Fleetwood 60 Special epitomized the height of American luxury, offering a vehicle that was not only a status symbol, but also a showcase of Cadillac's commitment to opulence. However, this very dedication to luxury, combined with its massive size and overly complicated features, made it impractical for many buyers. While the car appealed to those who wanted the ultimate expression of wealth and comfort, it ultimately suffered from the very excesses that defined it, resulting in a vehicle that was difficult to handle, costly to maintain, and far from practical for everyday use. First and foremost, the size of the Cadillac Fleetwood 60 Special was a significant drawback. At over 19 feet long and weighing nearly 5,000 pounds, it was an enormous vehicle even by 1960s standards. While its massive proportions allowed for a spacious and comfortable interior, they also made the car exceedingly difficult to maneuver, particularly in crowded urban environments. Parking a Fleetwood 60 Special was a challenge in itself, often requiring careful navigation to fit into standard parking spaces. Its size also made it unwieldy on narrower streets, making driving in city traffic a frustrating experience for many owners. This lack of maneuverability contrasted with the growing trend of smaller, more agile vehicles that were easier to handle and park, even in the luxury segment. The excessive luxury features of the Fleetwood 60 Special, while impressive on paper, often proved to be more trouble than they were worth. Cadillac, in its quest to outdo itself, equipped the 60 Special with an array of gadgets and conveniences designed to pamper its occupants. This included power everything, from windows and seats to antennas and mirrors, along with advanced climate control systems and elaborate dashboard instruments. However, many of these features were prone to malfunctions, with power windows and seat mechanisms being especially problematic. The complexity of these systems meant that when they broke down, repairs were often difficult and expensive. Owners quickly discovered that maintaining such an intricate vehicle could be a financial burden, as the cost of keeping all of its luxury features operational added up over time. Additionally, the gas consumption of the Fleetwood 60 Special was astronomical. Powered by a 429 cubic inch V8 engine producing 340 horsepower, the car delivered impressive straight-line performance for such a large vehicle. However, this came at the cost of fuel efficiency. The Fleetwood 60 Special was notorious for its gas-guzzling nature, averaging well below 10 miles per gallon in normal driving conditions. In an era when fuel prices were still relatively low, this wasn't an immediate concern for many wealthy buyers, but it certainly contributed to the car's reputation as an impractical choice. As fuel prices began to rise in the following years, the Fleetwood's appetite for gasoline became an even more significant drawback for those looking to balance luxury with practicality. Another issue with the overabundance of features in the Fleetwood 60 Special was that many of these conveniences, while luxurious, didn't necessarily add to the vehicle's overall functionality. The car's air suspension system, designed to give it a smooth, cushioned ride, often proved to be temperamental. Though it allowed the Fleetwood to glide over bumps with ease, the system was prone to failure, leading to expensive repairs. Similarly, the power-operated seats, while impressive, were slow to adjust and sometimes malfunction, causing inconvenience rather than ease. For many buyers, these intricate systems felt more like gimmicks than practical improvements, especially when they began to fail, reinforcing the idea that Cadillac had gone overboard in its quest to deliver excess. Beyond the technical issues, the overall image of the 1965 Cadillac Fleetwood 60 Special was one of excessive luxury at a time when American car buyers were starting to shift toward more modern, streamlined designs. The Fleetwood's over-the-top opulence, while appealing to a certain class of buyer, also made it feel somewhat out of step with the changing sensibilities of the era. Consumers were becoming more conscious of the balance between luxury and practicality, seeking vehicles that provided refinement without sacrificing usability. These 15 cars from 1965 represent the not-so-great side of American automotive design. While some innovations seemed good on paper, they didn't translate well in the real world, leaving these cars as examples of what not to do in car manufacturing. From dangerous handling to impractical designs, these vehicles are best left in the history books.